Jesus. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Smack Talk Live. I am Coach Long with Lone Wolf. They're a little later edition this week, which is fine. There's more stuff to talk about today than there probably was Thursday anyways.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit going on in sports right now. I was thinking, Coach, that by the time we got to this day, the NBA Finals would be over with already, and here we are. It's 3-2, and this Finals is not over yet.
Right. But to be honest, I mean, Lakers have to win one of these last two games.
Yeah.
I don't see the Heat winning two games. So it's just a matter of time there. We've said this before in regards to the NBA. I don't think there's a ton of interest. Ratings are in the toilet. So much so is that the commissioner came out and said next year they will not have any social justice slogans on jerseys or courts next year.
Yeah.
Which we talked about that when they first did it, that this
Right.
might happen and they need to be careful. I don't think there's a lot of people too interested in the NBA
Finals did so.
Exactly. So,
right. Well, and it wasn't exactly the matchup that everybody was thinking about. No, hats off to the Heat; they've obviously played well to get to this point, but it wasn't exactly the matchup that everybody was kind of dreaming about or thinking about. So, I think a lot of people looked at it and maybe said, "Oh, it's the Lakers' final to lose," like we said, and that's pretty much where we think we still sit with it.
Oh yeah, and I think everybody's more excited about getting the finals done with, getting to the draft, and then getting to free agency. Because I really truly think
crazy free agent off season like we were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this free agency period in the NBA could be one of the more chaotic ones we've seen in a long time. So, but we'll wait and see. I have some opinions on some moves I think some teams will make, but we'll talk about that later on when we get closer to that period. So, moving on to Major League Baseball, real quick. We are to the championship series. And lo and behold, Lone Wolf, our two picks are still alive.
They're still very much alive, yes.
We both picked the Rays, we both picked the Braves, and those two teams are still alive. Game one of the LCS is tonight. It actually starts here shortly. So, you know, and I haven't really looked at the rating numbers for um, the baseball playoffs because again, I just don't think that there is a overwhelming excitement for baseball. It, you
Hmm.
know, and yeah, the expanded playoffs, um, I think kept more people engaged, but once their teams were eliminated, they dropped off again.
Sure.
It's not like the NFL where if your team gets eliminated, you're still going to follow the rest of the NFL playoffs to the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
You know, baseball's not like that. So I don't know what baseball needs to do. I really don't know. Um, I do like the faster pace that they're going,
Right.
um, which I think can pay dividends if they stick with it. Again, they have to stick with it. They're not known for sticking with things that are working for them. Um,
Well, and
so,
change comes hard to baseball. We've talked about that. I mean, they have made changes over the years, but there's a lot of traditional feeling in baseball. A lot of fans want to see certain things stay a certain way. That's just kind of the identity of baseball. So it's been difficult for them to, I think, make some of those changes where it can engage some of those other fans that you want to get, the casual fan.
yeah, right,
Yeah. But I think, I mean, you look at it, I think there's going to be a lot of interest in the championship series and then the World Series. I think depending on who gets there, you've got some storylines, at least in this one, with the Astros being here. Um, there's probably still some talk or sentiment about the Astros after the whole scandal.
right,
Uh, I would think so. I mean, there's probably some people out there rooting against the Astros just because of that. You would imagine, and then of course you either kind of love or hate the Dodgers right now. I think. I mean, that's what it feels like. Um, so there's some storylines there to talk about, and I think there's some interest there because of that.
right. Yeah, it'll be interesting if somehow the Braves could beat the Dodgers. Um,
Hmm.
I think everybody's kind of writing off the World Series as the Dodgers are going to win it,
Yeah.
um, which I don't know. We've seen it a lot, often that, the best team that just cruises into the World Series all of a sudden lays an egg because they just think they're going to be anointed, champions. And that doesn't necessarily happen. So, um, I guess we'll see what happens there. I'm hoping the Braves beat the Dodgers. Um, I'd love to see Tampa Bay at Atlanta and, you know,
Right, like we talked about.
like we talked about, and the Rays finally getting that championship that's been eluding them for the last decade. So,
Right. Well, and I think it's
um,
hard to somewhat, just a last note about that is with the playoffs the way that they were, some of these teams had come into these series where they really kind of dominated or blasted teams as they got to this point. And I don't know that that's the best measure of how the team's going to play in this championship series because you look at some of the games and the lopsided scores, and I think what you saw is that some of these teams maybe just weren't as good. Um, and some teams are just playing their great baseball. But now you get to the championship series. Okay, you made it through those couple rounds. That may not be the case. So I wouldn't put a lot of stock into it if you look at some of those earlier scores and somebody won 12-3 or whatever the case may be.
right, exactly. The World Series is totally different than a regular season series. The regular season, again, the good teams are just making sure they're putting themselves in a position to make the postseason, staying healthy. Once you get to the postseason, it's you know, all hands on deck and you do whatever you have to do to win. So it's a little different setup,
Right.
strategy wise when it comes to a postseason series versus a regular season series. So, moving on, NFL. We there was
Yeah.
quite a bit of action this week in the NFL. Um, just briefly, there, more COVID um,
Right.
positive cases coming with some NFL teams. You had games that are totally taken off this week, moved to a bye week. You have a game now going Tuesday night, and so this is something that if you are an NFL fan, you are watching with a lot of concern because it seems to be increasing now the last 2 weeks. Um, so I
Well,
don't know.
my concerns too is, and I don't think this is fair, and I'm just gonna say it. Look at the schedule now. I mean, some of these games had to be moved because of this. So you've got Bills Titans on Tuesday, and then Bills Chiefs on Thursday. How is it fair that the Bills get saddled with games like that? And I mean, I guess they probably had to do that based on how the COVID had impacted some of these teams, but how is it fair for an NFL team to turn around and have to play a game 2 days later like that?
Well, I thought they had moved that Thursday game to
Oh, on
Sunday.
the 15th, you mean?
Yeah, I believe
Okay.
there will not be a Thursday game this week. From the stuff I was reading, I'd have to go and dig through everything because there's a ton of it out there.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I
because a
believe
lot of
they
these games have been moved and changed quite a bit.
right.
So this is just what
And,
I'm seeing right now. Yeah.
and as a fan, you're just going to have to kind of go with it. If you want to see professional football, you're just going to have to accept it, not complain about it. They're going to do what they can to get their season in.
Right. Yeah.
Um, it's going to be interesting though once it comes down to, teams are out of bye weeks and trying to cram these games in. If you get like the Jets versus Washington,
Mm-hmm.
late in the season and there's a COVID, you could just say, you know what, we're just going to chalk that up as a no game and a tie because it's not
Sure.
really going to matter.
Yeah, there
But
will be zero playoff implications between these
right,
two teams. Yeah.
right. So it'll be interesting moving forward with that. Um, we had our first coach firing of the year. We were
Yes.
wrong. He was on our list of
Yes.
coaches on the hot seat. I kind of figured that he would be removed before the end of the season, but I did not pick him as the first coach.
No.
Um, Bill O'Brien, given the walking papers from Houston, um, not surprising in my mind.
No.
He was both the head coach and the general manager. You trade away arguably one of the better wide receivers in the league for a washed up running back, which didn't make sense because you but had arguments with him. I'm sorry, if you're a coach at any level, you're going to have arguments with players. You don't
Yeah.
cut a player or bench a player or trade a player because you have an argument with that player. Um, you know,
I mean, you might bench somebody, but it might be a temporary situation, not he made me mad, so now he's going to sit for the rest of the game or something.
right. Yeah, but most coaches are swallow the pride and just deal
Sure.
with it, in house behind closed doors. Bill O'Brien didn't do that. He aired out every little dirty detail that was going on within the organization. I'm surprised he wasn't let go at the end of last year and probably making the playoffs and winning the division saved his job.
Right.
But the ownership should have seen this before then. Last year, that division was not very good. Tennessee, anybody you talk to, overperformed last year
Mm-hmm.
um, to make the playoffs. Other than that, that division was abysmal. And now you had teams improve in that division, and your roster got worse. Um, Plus, some of your key players like Watt are getting older,
Yeah.
and you really haven't done much to build around a core group of guys. So it's not too surprising.
No. And
Um,
I think honestly, I think he got fired because of the way he was general managing the team
Right.
more so than the coaching. Because I mean, you look at it, he had a fairly decent record over the time that he was there, and I think he was there for 6 seasons. But I think it's more the general manager moves, and that's everything you just talked about. I mean, you can't have a tiff with a player and just say, okay, we're going to trade you because it hurts your organization. I mean, you look at how Houston's offense has been this year; it's a completely different offense. It's just not as good. It's clearly not as good. They can't create and move the ball in the same way they were last year. So as a GM, you really almost should have those positions separate. I think this is case in point for maybe showing why those positions should be separate, um, as opposed to having a GM head coach, combination. It's a rare person that can pull that off, I think. And too many times people are willing to hand the keys of the kingdom to one person, and it doesn't work.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, I've never been a fan of the combo of head coach and general manager. We had that in Green Bay a few times.
Yeah,
Seen it, with Mike Holmgren in Seattle, and yes, he got to a Super Bowl, but
right,
overall, it was not, a huge long-term success there. The only person that I can think of that's had long term success of being head coach and general manager is Bill Belichick.
right,
And
right.
he's just a freak of a coach and a mind to see talent. So
Right. He
you
should be viewed as, to me, the exception rather than the rule.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised if we see another firing this week. I think Gase is on the way out. They got thumped again today, and they benched Sam Darnold.
I mean,
Um,
this is worse than a train. It's like a train wreck and a dumpster fire all rolled into one with how
right.
bad this team is.
They're bad. I don't see them winning a game.
I don't know if they possibly can. They're just terrible. I mean, yeah, I think it was. Is Joe Flacco? Is that who their backup is?
Joe,
Is Joe
Joe
Flacco
Flacco
playing today?
played today. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes. So Joe Flacco played, and I'm
And
just
his better
scrolling.
days are behind him. So I
Yeah,
mean,
and I'm just scrolling through the just
well,
to
and
sort of
you
looking at
look at it,
record.
coach. So the teams that are in a bad position, they to me, I mean, we talked about Bill O'Brien getting fired. We were surprised that he was the first one, because this Jets team is just so bad that Adam Gase just needs to get out of it. They just need to fire him. And honestly, Dan Quinn, the way they've been losing, I still see the thing about the Falcons though. To me, the Jets are the worst team in football, and I don't think there's any question about that.
By
The
far.
Falcons have some promise. I mean, they have some pieces where you can make something out of it,
But
but they need
that
a new
Dan,
voice
Dan
in the
Quinn
locker room.
Dan Quinn's gonna be gone. They're 0-5.
Yeah,
They're
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 on
0
five. Yeah, they lost again. Yeah,
They're 0-5. They had a subpar year last year. Since making the Super Bowl and blowing that lead, they have not been a competitive team. Dan Quinn's getting fired. It's just a matter of
yeah,
when,
yeah.
not if.
Right,
Same with Adam Gase. It's a matter of when, not if. Um,
right.
you know, those two off the top of my head are the ones that for sure are gone. Doug Marrone, same thing. They lost again to the Texans today. We'll get into those games
Right.
when we go through the scoreboard, but they're 1-4. You, a
Right.
3-13, a 4-12 season. I don't care if you've traded away and released some of your top talent. That's not going to save your job when you've been given so many opportunities to get this thing turned around. So those coaches for sure, I believe, are going to be gone. Um, I
Yeah,
think,
and Marone had a chance. I mean, they started off the season and they beat the Colts, and we kind of thought, oh, maybe they're not as bad as we thought they were. But they've just steadily gone downhill from there, and have been
yeah,
losing games left and right, not being able to piece things together on offense and defense cohesively. I mean, they just haven't been able to put it together for 4 quarters in any game.
exactly. And now, depending on what happens tonight between the Seahawks and the Vikings, if the Vikings lose this game, I can definitely see the rumblings of Mike Zimmer being fired. That is the one coach I think that it would be a mistake to let go because he knows what he's doing. He just doesn't have the talent on the roster right now. And
Right.
I think that's more on the GM and not him. They let all these top guys go and then thought, oh, we'll just draft our needs and we'll be okay. That's not going to work. It doesn't work in the NFL. If
Right.
it did, these teams that are bad year in and year out would be good because you're drafting high in the draft. If it was just you can draft and be good. So unfortunately, I think Zimmer's going to be. He'll probably make the season, but I think the Vikings will move on from him. Um, and but he'll land somewhere else and do a good job wherever he goes. So
Yeah.
um, the only other um, well, and now if we'll talk about this the the games themselves here, what's going on. But the talk this week too was the Cowboys possibly replacing Mike Nolan. Um, they've already given up 34 points today to the Giants.
The second
Um,
worst team in football, potentially. Yeah.
right, who I think the Giants beat the Jets. To be honest,
I mean, yeah, I honestly, right now, the Jets are the worst team, like we said.
the
Yeah,
Jets.
I mean, the Jets are
It's
probably
not
the
even
worst.
close. The
Right.
Jets are the worst team. So,
Yeah,
but
and I think that you have to, when we were talking a little earlier, I sent you that clip or a little blip from an article I read, and they're admitting. I mean, Dallas defenders are admitting they're taking plays off, and well, if I'm on the other side of the field, I'm not hustling to get to the play on the opposite side of the field. Like, it may not be your responsibility, but there's a reason teams are championship level teams. They hustle, they move, they fly around on defense. People say that because that's what they're doing. Not you're kind of loafing around and you just take plays off. You know,
well,
there's no effort there.
and to be honest, that's not just on Mike Nolan. That's on Mike McCarthy.
Oh, I agree. Yeah,
He was the worst hire in the offseason for a head coach, especially for a franchise that expects to be good. I mean,
right.
they're driving right now, but they're trailing the Giants halfway through the fourth quarter.
Even more than halfway, I think,
Yeah.
if we look at it. Yeah, yeah,
So we'll get in those games. So, but
sure.
you know, we'll talk about each individual situation here. So
Okay.
let's get into this week's
Let's
games.
yeah, let's just jump into them. We'll start back
The,
on Thursday with the Bucks and the Bears.
the Bucks and the Bears. The Bears defeat the Buccaneers 2019 to go to 4-1. I think we can both agree that the Bears are probably the worst 4-1 team in the league.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
agree.
I I think part of it was that Tom Brady forgot that it was fourth down. He
Yeah,
thought it was third down at the end of the game. Um, you know, I I don't think the Buccaneers are as good as everybody thinks they are, but at the same time, the Bears are definitely not as good as a 4-1 record. Granted,
no,
they play who they play. They beat four teams, but I don't think that they're going to be making noise in the postseason.
no. I will give him this though. I mean, you do go out and you do beat a team that you finally get a win that means something to me. Because who did you beat before that? You beat the Falcons, who are 0-5. You beat the Lions, who are 1-3. And you beat the Giants, who we don't know yet, but they at least had no wins coming into this week. So you haven't beaten anybody. So you want respect as a football team. You got to go out there and you got to play somebody, win and earn that. Now, granted, they had beat those teams and I didn't lose to them, so I mean that does count for something. But this win against the Bucks to me means that the Bears are not abysmal. They actually have some potential. They're 4-1 right now, so people are probably looking. Well, this is a team that could potentially make the postseason, maybe, but I'm still reserving judgment on that. I still don't think that they're very good overall.
Yeah, either do I. I mean, I believe they play the NFC South, so you guys still got to play Green Bay twice.
Right.
Um, they have to play the Panthers, who are playing better. They play the Rams, they play the Saints, they play the
Yeah.
Titans, they play the Packers twice. Um,
Got a lot of tough teams on that schedule yet. Yeah.
they do have the Vikings twice, and if
Mhm.
the Vikings can score. So if the
Right.
Vikings can score on them, I don't know if the Bears' offense is as explosive as the Vikings. So they have a tough road here starting. It won't be next week. Oh no, it is next week. Against the Panthers. They're at Carolina, and we'll get into Carolina here a little
Yeah.
bit.
In just a second. Yep.
But yeah, I'm still going to hold caution on them. Yes, they're 4-1. They're in a great position to make the postseason, but I don't think they're as good as their record says they are.
Yeah.
Um, so that's just my opinion there.
No, and I agree with you on that. Yeah.
All right, so we will move to the Panthers versus the Falcons. The Panthers today beat the Falcons to move to 3-2 now on the
Yeah.
year. And the Falcons dropped to 0-5. We talked about Dan Quinn. Um, as of right now, Rule, you look at the new coaches, he's
Yeah.
got to be heading up I would say, if they can be 8-8, 9-7, you got to consider him as coach of the year. Because I don't think anybody expected the Panthers to be 3-2 at this point in the season.
Right. Right. They've been putting things together, and not only that. I mean, you look at it. If you said they're 3-2 and they have no Christian McCaffrey right now,
Right.
I mean, I don't know if anybody would have said that, given the young players they have on defense, the new head coach. I like the way this team is trending, and I think they're figuring some things out. And hats off to Teddy Bridgewater because he's playing great football. And after being a backup and doing so well in New Orleans last year, you looked at it and you kind of wondered, well, what's going to happen with him? But he's figuring things out, and he's been playing at a high level in Carolina. So I like the way that this team is trending. I like how they look right now, and I like how he's playing.
All right. Moving on to the Raiders and the Chiefs. The Raiders come away with a big win at Kansas City, 40-32. Um, this tells me one thing. The Chiefs are good. Their defense is not as good as it was last year.
Right.
Um, the Raiders offense I don't think is that explosive, but Derek Carr threw three TDs. Josh Jacobs rushed for two TDs. Um, they they put it to Kansas City. I believe they had a defensive score in the game. Um, so if I'm a Chiefs fan, I'm not like hitting the panic button, but I'm a little concerned. We just gave up
Yeah.
40 points to the Raiders at home.
Right.
I'm a little concerned with that. And I think what's happening is, yes, Mahomes, great quarterback. He's probably going to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league for a long time. But just like Brett Favre, just like Troy Aikman, just like Aaron Rodgers, just like Joe Montana, defensive coordinators get more and more film on you and see how teams have little successes here and there, and then they will develop a game plan to do just enough to allow you to win games against them.
Yeah.
And you know, will this happen week in week out with the Chiefs? Probably not. But this now puts the Chiefs behind the Steelers for home field advantage. And
Right.
anytime you have to go on the road, I don't care who you have, it's harder in the playoffs than it is to play at home.
And I'll say this too. I mean, I agree. I think you start seeing that a little bit. Teams start figuring it out. And he's, don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously he's a great quarterback and he's been playing at a high level. But you saw that New England just isn't good enough to beat the Chiefs. Like they went in and Bill Belichick had a game plan and they really put the clamps down on the Chiefs offense in that game. But they're just not good enough to have defeated the Chiefs. Well, now enter a team here who, like you said, they did enough to contain him. And then defensively, the Chiefs gave up so many big plays, and the Raiders hadn't really been hitting on these home run plays this year. I mean, they had some where they ran the ball quite a bit, but Carr and Henry Ruggs and some of these other receivers really lit up the Chiefs in the secondary, and I was a little surprised by how many big plays that they gave up, some big touchdowns. So no, I agree, not hitting the panic button yet, but you look at the Chiefs and you say, okay, it's not going to be an easy road. It's going to be a dogfight with some of the top teams in the AFC.
Well, that's the thing. You and just imagine if a team with a really explosive offense plays Kansas City.
Like the Green
Um,
Bay Packers, perhaps.
yeah, like the Packers. I'll tell you
Yeah,
right now,
yeah,
you get Lazard and Adams back, and you take that offense to and play the Chiefs on a neutral field.
yeah,
Oh, that could be a 56-52 ball game.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there's going to be some
yeah, yeah.
fireworks.
It could be
So,
pretty nuts. Yeah, yeah,
right. So moving on, this next game not going to be really much to say. Cardinals beat the Jets 30-10. We already talked about it. Adam Gase should be fired immediately. We say it every
yeah.
week.
Right.
Um, you bench Sam Darnold for whatever reason. I don't know if he was hurt or they just weren't happy with his play. But the Cardinals moved to 3-2. Jets moved to 0-5.
Yeah, yeah. Good
Um,
win for the Cardinals, I guess. I mean, it's a win, so they'll
yeah, a
take it.
win's a win in
Yep.
the
Win's a
NFL.
win. Yep.
Uh, Eagles at the Steelers. The Steelers come out with a 9-point victory. This was kind of a close game until late in the third quarter. The
Hmm.
Steelers finally took the lead. Um, I'll say this, just from looking at everything, the Eagles are probably the best 1-3-1 team, the below 500 team in the league. Um,
Yeah.
they put it together offensively today. Their defense just has too many holes in it to really, I think, get the Eagles anywhere deep. Now, in that division,
It's up for
again,
grabs.
it, you could be sitting at 1-3-1 and be still in this thing. So the
Well,
NFC
they
East,
may be the division leader after this week. I'm not sure. I don't
um,
know. Record wise, if Dallas loses to New York,
yeah,
maybe
they,
that would
they
be the
may
case.
be.
Yeah.
And right now
So,
the Giants have the ball. The game's tied with under 2 minutes to go, and they
right,
are at about their own 40. So
right.
um, that would be a huge, huge upset, and really start questioning if Jerry Jones might pull the trigger on Mike McCarthy and toss him out before half a season's done, which
Wouldn't that be crazy if
kind
he
of be
just
funny to be honest.
hired the guy?
So, but the
Yeah.
Steelers offense looks very dynamic. I think even with right now, and we'll talk about it more like the Browns, and did end up winning. So they moved to 4-1, their game behind, technically Pittsburgh. But I don't think the Browns have enough to beat the Steelers without Nick Chubb in the lineup.
Right.
So, moving on, another one we not too much to talk about. The Rams moved to 4-1, beat the Washington football team 30-10. Again, the Rams, one of the most surprising teams in my book. Um,
Right.
did not expect this from them at all. I was thinking they'd be maybe reverse 1-4 at this point. So,
Right. And they're
um,
playing a lot better. Goff is playing a lot better than we expected. Defensively, they're playing much closer to where they had or should have been playing at a certain level. I mean, Aaron Donald looks good. A lot of other defensive players look good. it's a better team than we thought. So, hats off to them. Yeah, I mean, I know they beat Washington, but they have some quality. They have some quality wins, and they played well against the Bills. So this is a better team than we expected.
Exactly. The Ravens defeat the Bengals 27-3. But it didn't feel like that was a really impressive win by the Ravens. They
No,
don't, to me, they don't look like they are totally in sync like they were last year offensively.
right?
And you're playing the Bengals. You should score more than 27 points against the Bengals. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Um,
It just
you,
kind of seemed like you said they're just not really they're not chugging along on all cylinders. That the first game against the Browns, they kind of felt that way, but it feels like they're a little bit derailed. They're still a really good team and they're going to beat these kind of teams. The Bengals should beat them, but yeah, there's something about them that, you put them up against the other teams in the NFL, they're not quite there. And some of that has to do, I think, with Lamar Jackson just not playing at the level he was last year.
right. Moving on. The Texans get off the schneid with Romeo Crennel as their interim head coach and beat the Jaguars 30-14. A win's a win, but you beat the Jaguars.
Yeah,
So,
well,
um,
I
those two
mean, they
teams,
needed that though. They really needed a win. You know,
well, yeah, they
um,
needed it. But at the same time, don't get too big of a head and get too excited if you are a Texans
yeah,
fan.
yeah,
You don't play the Jaguars every week.
right.
So,
Well, and I think you look at it and you say, okay, we fired our head coach and general manager. Romeo's going to come in, do a pretty good job, I would think. He's a tenured guy. But yeah, don't get crazy. They're not making the postseason, so
right.
they're just gonna be the holding action, keep the season together, play, and move on for next year. So,
All right. And probably the biggest shocker, at least of the early games,
oh
the
yeah,
Miami Dolphins throttle the 49ers at San Francisco
oh man, I'm laughing.
43-17, and they benched Garoppolo and put in Bedford. Um, San Francisco's in trouble.
Yeah, deep
They're in
trouble,
trouble.
deep trouble.
Um,
Yeah,
they if they don't get things figured out, they won't even make the postseason.
yeah. Well, look at that division. I mean, you've
That's
got
what
the
I'm saying.
Rams, the Seahawks, the Cardinals, and the Niners. And it's loaded in that division. And if they can't, they are absolutely right. They are not making the postseason.
Yeah, it is unbelievable. They are in a world of hurt right now. You're sitting at
Yeah.
2-3. They're 0-3 at home.
Yeah, that's brutal. That's
That's
just
not
brutal.
good.
No.
I don't care what team you are. If you expect to be a Super Bowl contender,
Right.
okay, you have to win in your home at home. You have to. Those should be easy wins. But and we'll go through the standings here quick, before, at the end of the show. But I'll tell you
Okay.
what, the I again, and I think this happened the last time the 49ers went to the Super Bowl and lost. They went the one year, and then it's almost like it was, hey, we're back like we were in the 80s and the early 90s. We're just gonna
Right.
roll to the Super Bowl every year. And they stink.
It's just, yeah, it's just not the case. I
Basically.
mean, yeah, I think part of it though is the injuries that we thought were going to catch up with them against the Giants didn't, because the Giants are just not that good. And now you see the Dolphins, who I gotta say, for me personally, just gotta say, my guy Brian Flores, look at what they're putting together in Miami.
Yeah.
This win was amazing for the Dolphins. Um, they just laid the hammer down on the 49ers. This is an embarrassment. if you're a 49ers fan, if you're part of the team. And I know it's 1 week, so I don't want to go crazy, but they are in trouble. This is indicative of larger problems, a lot of injuries. Over the course of the season, they are definitely in trouble.
Well, right, exactly. If you would lose a close game to the Dolphins at home with all the injuries
Yeah.
you've had, you can understand it. They got worked. They got ran off the field. It wasn't
Yeah.
even close. You benched your starter who you thought was the Messiah and going to bring a Vince Lombardi trophy back to San Francisco.
Yeah.
You benched him.
Yeah.
They got all sorts of issues in San Francisco. I think they're
I'm
playing.
sure they would say it might be because of lingering, injury issues, but we know that that's garbage.
It's part of it that's going to hurt you, but it is
Sure. But I'm,
not.
I'm talking about just Jimmy Garoppolo. Like they'll probably say they benched him because he had some lingering injuries or whatever from the week before. But that to me is not the case, and that's not why they benched him.
But here in my rebuttal to that, Lone Wolf, would be then
Right. Yeah.
if he's still hurt, why play him?
Yeah. Why put him out there? Yeah.
Why play him?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Why would you put
Right.
him in the game then? If he was
Well, and
still
yeah.
fighting the injuries, why play him?
And I just think, some guys like a Favre, the Iron Man, you go out there and you play, even if you had an injury or is a lingering injury. But I just don't know. To me, it feels like they just don't have the same confidence in him. So if he was injured and he's playing, or if he is better and he's playing, I mean, you bench your starter, like you said, he's supposed to be the guy that's bringing you the promised land. I just don't feel like they have the confidence in him, you know. And this was something that we talked about. Remember, before they were kind of in the maybe we'll get Tom Brady in the offseason
Yep.
here, So I, there were whispers of this before, talk about it, and this is only going to intensify that talk when you bench him like this. So
All right. And we say that they're in trouble. People are probably like, oh no, they'll be fine. Well, let's take a look at their schedule. We have plenty of time here.
yeah,
Next week, you play the Rams.
right,
That's could very well be a loss. Then you're at the Patriots, at the Seahawks, play the Packers, play the Saints, play the Rams, play the Bills. Holy
come
cow.
on, right?
Holy cow. I, that is
There's
a
nobody on that schedule that you look at and you say, okay, this is an
that
easy win.
yeah, until you get to December 13th versus Washington. And then you
Yeah,
go Washington, Dallas, who you don't know right now because they're kind of
right.
up and down, but then Arizona
Yeah,
and then Seattle again. So you have 2 games remaining on your schedule that are probably, yeah, we're fairly confident we can win those games. The rest
right.
of them,
Yeah, you're playing good teams week in, week out.
I, I just,
Honestly, the way it looks right now, and I know this is people get reactionary about things, but the way it looks right now, I think the 49ers could be 6-10 at the end of the year.
uh, Lone Wolf, I'm looking at it as if you're saying predict right now, I'm saying 4-12. You can beat
Yeah,
Washington,
yeah,
you can beat Dallas. I'm not giving you any leeway in any of those other games with what happened today.
yeah.
None whatsoever. Now they're probably not going to finish 4-12.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
that's why I say 6-10. I think I'd be a little bit more realistic, but they could have double-digit losses. And look at that schedule and the way that they're playing with all the injuries that they had. They could very well end up in that situation.
Exactly. So, you know, you, you kind of feel bad for the fans, but at the same time, you know, it is what it is.
Right. Yeah.
So, moving on to the Colts and the Browns, one of the afternoon games. The Browns end up beating the Colts 32-23. Colts fall 3-2. Browns move to 4-1. Um, that AFC North division is pretty tough.
Yeah.
You got the Steelers undefeated. You have the Ravens and the Browns with one loss. Um,
Right.
you know,
And then you have the Bengals. But
you know,
yeah, it's
one
good
thing
division.
is I think the Colts are a good team. I don't think their defense is as good as they thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I think their defense is struggling. So yes, the Browns, you won the game. It's a solid win, but you don't have. Yes, you have Kareem Hunt at running back. He is not the same player as Chubb. When you go to play these top tier teams, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Kansas City,
Hmm.
you're gonna struggle. You're gonna struggle because I don't think the Colts defense is as dynamic as those other teams I just listed.
I think too, though, the Colts are not, and I thought they would be more improved, and they are this year than they were last year. But offensively, they just quite, they're not quite there. Like they're not explosive, and they're not a top tier offense. You know, Philip Rivers is not quite that same guy that we had seen in San Diego. He's good and he's a lot better than what you probably would have had. But offensively, I don't think that if they get down in a game, I think it's really hard for them to get back in it. You know, there are certain teams you look at and you say, okay, if this team is down and you put the football in the hands of one of these guys, more often than not, they're going to go down, they're going to score. You don't look at the Colts and think that if they get behind in a game. And yeah, I think the Browns kind of came out with the right offensive game plan and took it to the Colts defense a little bit. I mean, 32 points is not insignificant. So yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right on that. Their defense is not quite as good as maybe they thought it was going to be.
Right. So, just one final. The Cowboys kicked the last second field goal to beat the Giants 37-34. Um, Dallas has to have one of the worst defenses in the league,
Yeah,
points per game.
yeah,
I mean, they've allowed 146 points this season.
yeah. It's just atrocious.
That's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah,
Now, that's not the big storyline of the game, and we'll have to wait to see the extent of this. Dak Prescott was hospitalized and carted off the field, and the team is saying it's a serious right ankle injury,
oh boy.
and he's going to have surgery on the ankle tonight. That tells me his season is probably over. You
Yes.
just don't. You
You
don't
just, as a
come back.
quarterback, moving around in the pocket, having people land on you, having a right ankle injury, you just can't shift, move, plant. Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. It could very well be over for him for the season.
And it's his right. Looking at the picture, it's his right ankle, so it's your back foot. It's your drive leg. You're gonna.
Right.
I do not see him coming back this season. Andy Dalton will probably be leading the way, which I think when you play these better teams,
Yeah.
you're gonna struggle. You're gonna struggle. You're sitting there
Yeah.
at 2-3. Okay, great. You beat the Giants on a last second field goal. Next
Yeah.
week you play the Cardinals. I'm gonna give that to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Um,
I agree.
then you play Washington. Okay, you can probably win that one. Then you play Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, Washington again, Baltimore, Cincinnati, the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Giants again.
Yeah.
I on the good thing is right now you're in first place in the NFC East.
Right. Right. I mean, I look
So,
at it and I think, the problem you have in Dallas is, defensively, we talked about that. But if Prescott is truly out, then they are going to be in big trouble in terms of even winning their own division, in my opinion, because Andy Dalton's not bad, but I don't think he's at the same level as Dak Prescott. So offensively, you're going to take a step back. Well, if offensively you take a step back, you're not winning these games on last second field goals anymore because your defense is so horrid. If you can't stop anybody, you have to score 37 points every single game. But once you can't do that anymore, then you're losing these games. You're losing these close games. And that
Exactly.
is not going to bode well for the Cowboys unless something magically happens to their defense where it becomes better. But
Right.
right now, I'm not seeing it.
All right. So quick preview. On I believe there's a Sunday night game.
Yeah, the Vikings Seahawks tonight.
Well, the
Yeah,
Vikings. Well, yeah. So the Vikings Seahawks. Um, the Vikings are technically at Seattle. Um,
yeah,
I really think this might be kind of a high scoring affair. I
yeah,
think Seattle's defense is getting worse as the weeks go on. But I think Seattle's offense is so dynamic with Russell Wilson that the Seahawks are going to win this game. I just don't think Minnesota has what it takes to stay with them in a scoring fest. Russell Wilson has 16 touchdown passes already this year.
yeah. I agree with that. The Seattle's defense has been underwhelming to me, and that to me is a major concern if you are looking at this team making a deep run, which I think legitimately you should, um, because they've been giving up a lot of points to everybody that they've played. They don't have a good pass rush, and that's a problem as you look, down the road in the season and the playoffs. But tonight, yeah, against the Vikings will probably put up 30. I mean, they did the same thing with the Packers. They've done the same thing in a couple of other games when their offense wasn't looking completely atrocious and a couple of other losses that they had. But even if they put up 30, the way Russell Wilson is playing, he'll probably put up 40. So it really won't matter because there's no way the Vikings defense can stop Russell Wilson. He's just playing
Right.
too well right now, and they're just not enough of a challenge for him.
Exactly. Moving on to tomorrow night's game, San Diego at New Orleans. Um, I like Justin Herbert. I think he's playing really well. I think he's going to be, if he continues on this, trajectory, I think he'll be a very good quarterback in the league. But they don't have. New Orleans is eventually going to get this thing figured out and rattle off 3, 4 wins in a row here at some point. And I think that starts against the Chargers. Um, so I think the Saints will come away a clear victor in the Monday night game.
And I think that this one might be a little closer. I wasn't totally inspired by the way that the Saints had to come out and beat the Lions, and it just didn't feel like they were in complete control of that game. They were down early too. It didn't quite inspire the same confidence in me in terms of the Saints. However, I still feel that they're going to win against the Chargers. The Chargers had their chance against the Panthers their previous game, and they just couldn't quite get it done. They're not that great, but you're right. I like it. I like Herbert too. I think he's going to be a good quarterback in the league the way he's playing right now. But I think the veteran Breeze gets the better of this one. New Orleans figures a few things out on defense, and they win this game.
All right. And then the final game of the week, the Bills at the Titans, two undefeated teams. Um, you know, this one's a hard one to call, but I'm
Yeah,
going to give the advantage to the Bills because the Titans have had so much uncertainty whether they're going to play, not play, their facilities closed, this and that I think they come out really flat
yeah.
and the Bills get up early. Um, and I think it'll be a close game, but I think that early lead that the Bills build will be able to, they'll be able to hold on to that. I just I'm concerned with the Titans right now just because of everything they have going on off the field, in their
Right.
team with all the COVID stuff going on. So I like the Bills on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and I like the Bills too. I think the Titans are one of those, scrappy, able to win games, but they just haven't quite faced a team. I don't think at the level of the Bills quite yet. I mean, the Bills have been playing uh, great football, where their offense has been able to make up some of the deficiencies on defense if there was ever a slippage. Whereas last year, they really had to rely on their defense a lot more. This year, offensively, they've been able to put points up, and Josh Allen has looked really dynamic and really good this year. He's playing as a top five quarterback, in my opinion. So I think they walk in here and the Bills win. I could see it being a 10-point victory. So
All right. So, the last thing I want to touch on, we talked a little bit about, coaches, whatnot.
yeah.
Looking at the standings, teams that we are, worried about that we thought would be playoff contenders, and teams that we are shocked on that are in position to make the playoffs. We talked about the 49ers and just looking at it, they're at 2-3 in that division.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Seattle's 4-0 before tonight. The Rams are 4-1. Arizona's 3-2. Um, if Seattle wins tonight, you're 3 games back at the division lead. Um,
Right.
that's gonna be tough to make up. So, we're worried, I think, a little bit about San Francisco. Team that I'm worried about also in the NFC is the Saints. If they win tonight or tomorrow night, I mean, they'd be 3-2, tied for the division lead because the Buccaneers lost. But you have a three-way tie there for the division lead,
Right. With the Panthers there too. Yep.
right, with the Panthers. Which the Panthers, to me, that's a shocking start. They've won 3 in a row. Um, and I'm if you're a Saints fan, I would. This is my concern level is getting very warm here, um,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not like you have an easy schedule. You have a critical schedule coming up. You have the Chargers tonight, but now listen to the 3 games after this week's game. Assuming they win tonight or win
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow night, they're 3-2. They play the Panthers in 2 weeks because they have a bye next week, which is good. It will be good for them. They play the Panthers, then they play the Bears, and then the Buccaneers. Those are three
Yeah.
huge games right in a row, um, that they need to win. They need to win all 3 of those games,
Yeah. Absolutely.
because then after that they play the 49ers, Falcons, Broncos, Falcons, Eagles. Then the end of the season with the Chiefs, the Vikings, and the Panthers. So, you have a stretch there where you'll have some lesser teams on your schedule, but those 3 games, end of October, beginning of November, you have to win those. If they don't win those 3 games, they may not make the playoffs.
Right. Right.
Um,
And that to me would be surprising if that were the case, because this is a team that, people were looking at as a possible favorite in the NFC. Um, they really didn't lose a whole lot from last season, and they added a few things, not a lot in the draft, but it felt like, they were coming out and I want to say status quo, but for the most part they hadn't changed a lot. So yeah, that would be shocking to me if they were not in a position to make the postseason.
right. So, then you look at that surprising team I just mentioned, the Panthers.
Yeah.
They have the Bears next week, then the Saints, then the Falcons, and the Chiefs, then the Buccaneers. So their next four out of their next five games are big games for them.
Yeah.
And if they can beat the Bears, the Saints, the Falcons, and the Buccaneers out of those games, they're putting themselves in a really good position. Because then
Right.
to end the season, you have the Lions, Vikings, Broncos, Packers, Washington, and then New Orleans. That last week game against the Saints is going to be could be huge.
It could be.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, again, we thought the NFC, you know, South was going to be a barn burner of a division for two teams, but having the Panthers where they're at makes this a really intriguing division.
I agree.
Um,
Yeah.
Now you look at the Buccaneers. Next week they play the Packers, then the Raiders, then the Giants, then the Saints, then the Panthers, then the Rams, then the Chiefs, the Vikings. Then they end the season two games against the Falcons, one against the Lions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I look at their schedule and I am not confident that they can win a majority of those games
Yeah.
with the way the Packers are playing, with the way the Raiders are playing. I mean, even the Giants put up points against the Cowboys, but then you got the Saints and the Panthers, Rams, Chiefs. I'm sorry, that's
Right.
stretch.
It's a tough
Eh,
schedule. That's a tough group, a tough sledding right there. And I haven't been overly inspired. I think, everybody kind of got on the hype train and thought this team would be a lot better. You and I thought that they would contend for a playoff spot. We were never anointing them to be in the Super Bowl. So, I think there are some people who were thinking that they were, that good. They're not. I mean, this is it could. Yeah, you're right. This is where the intrigue lies in this division, depending on who comes out in some of these games, because each one of them has tough teams on their schedule. So, one of those three teams is going to come out the victor in some fashion. But who gets there? It's really hard to say. I mean, honestly, I kind of think right now, I have less confidence in the Buccaneers than I did at the beginning of the season.
I'd agree. I'd absolutely agree with that. Um, Not a ton of confidence in the Buccaneers. My confidence in the Saints is waning if they can't get stuff figured out. And then
Right,
the Buccaneers or the Panthers are just playing really well. And
right.
if they can come all these next couple of weeks right there, and then they get McCaffrey back,
Yeah,
they're going to be could be a force in that division at the end of the season.
right.
Um, Obviously, the Bears are surprising. You look at their schedule. You have the Panthers who are playing well. Then you got the Rams, the Saints, the Titans, Vikings, Packers, Lions, Texans, Vikings, Jaguars, Packers. Um, I'm looking at this. The 10-6, maybe 9-7.
Hmm.
It's going to come down to these games versus the Saints, the Panthers. Um, And even the game this week against the Buccaneers, that they could be tied with one of those teams in the NFC South for a playoff spot.
Right.
And you know, that's why it's really intriguing here because you don't see this a lot where you have teams like the Bears playing a division that you're going to have a lot of head-to-head matchups that
Hmm.
could alter the playoff field. We don't get that a ton, so it makes
Right.
this year a little intriguing in that aspect.
Yeah, and I'm surprised by them too. Just the record that they have. But we've talked about that several times. But yeah, I mean, if they want to prove themselves, this is the meat of the schedule where you have to do that. I personally don't think that they will, just because of all the things that we've talked about before. But we'll see. But I don't think so. I don't have a lot of confidence um, offensively in that team to be able to make it way through the meat of that schedule and come out where they're in a really stellar position. So to me, I think a surprising team, and we touched on this just a little bit as we went through the games, was the Browns. We talked about whether or not they could actually take that next step, and I know that they've beaten some lowly teams, but this victory today to me was a pretty key victory. They're starting to figure things out a little bit. I don't think they're an elite football team, and I don't want people to start thinking that that's the case. I always and will probably forever have reservations about Baker Mayfield unless he goes out and he wins like 3 Super Bowls. Uh, I'm not anointing him as anything other than, an average quarterback. So schematically, things improved greatly for the Browns, and coaching is way better. And you see that in how they're performing. But it's still, to me, I think it's a surprise them sitting at 4-1. Um, but
I,
I don't think that they're going to necessarily be in that same position come into the year.
I did, it is a little surprising at 4-1, but then I'm looking at their schedule and it's not. You got
Yeah.
blown out by Baltimore week 1.
Well, right.
You beat the Bengals by 5 week 2. You beat
Sure.
Washington by 14 on week 3. You beat Dallas by 11 in week 4, and you beat Indianapolis by 9 this week. The Colts are the best team that they beat, and the
Right.
Colts are a okay team.
Yeah.
Um, Now, if they go out and beat Pittsburgh next week, I'll start believing that they are a good football team. You play
Oh, right.
Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
then
And
you
I'm not
play
saying they're good. I'm just surprised that they're 4-1.
then you play the Bengals again, but then you play the Raiders, then you have the
Sure.
Texans, then you have the Eagles, Jaguars, and the Titans, and the Ravens, and the Giants, Jets, and Steelers again. I think 10-6 is a realistic record for them. Um, you know, they are not in that upper tier. They're
No,
in
they're not.
that, playoff type tier. Um, again, I am not going to sit here and anoint the Browns as they've figured things out. Um,
Right.
they're always going to be, you have to prove it to me. And
Yeah.
until you
Oh,
do,
yeah.
I'm not going to buy. But it is surprising that they're 4-1. I didn't think they'd be 4-1 at this point.
Right.
Um,
I just think that if they even make the playoffs this year, to me, that would be a surprise because I did not think that they would turn the corner in that regard
well,
and
here's the thing.
be in that position.
In the AFC, things are a lot more cut and dry, I think, right now with the playoff race.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you only have probably 3 teams vying that are a game behind. You have 3 teams that game behind the Browns and the Baltimore right now, and Kansas City for that. I know it's early; it's only week 5 for the playoffs, but in the NFL, one game can change everything. Um, Then you have the Dolphins, are a game and a half back, two
Oh, yeah,
games
for
back.
sure it can.
But you know, in the NFC, it's just so much more murky because you're gonna have that sub 500 team, and I mean, you're gonna disqualify, 8 teams out of the NFC.
Right.
Because they have no chance. You have 2 winless teams, and then the rest have 1 win. Um, the NFC East is going to get 1 team in. They're not getting 2.
Yeah. No, no
Um,
way.
so it's just one of those things where I think the NFC is going to be a little more intriguing. You're going to have a lot more up and down movement
Right.
than the AFC will. I think we figured that the Dolphins would be better, but they're not quite a playoff team. But they're sitting at 2-3.
Right.
If they can, get a couple of more upsets, they'll be right there. The Patriots, they are going to be an interesting team to watch because it all depends on how long Cam Newton needs to sit because of his COVID. Um, if he has to sit multiple
Right.
weeks and the
Right.
Patriots
And
drop
that's
one,
the thing. You clearly see. I mean, right. You clearly see with the Patriots if they don't have Cam Newton where they're going to sit. I mean, clearly the
right,
quarterback play is absolutely insufficient if he's not playing.
exactly.
So,
So, and then you have the Colts and the Raiders sitting at a game behind. Um, and again, I thought the Raiders would be there competing for a playoff spot. They got to put a streak together. Um, again, we'll know more probably in 3, 4 weeks, really where every team is, because
right.
you're gonna have teams start playing better teams. That's just the way it is. And I think some of these teams that are sitting with really nice looking records are going to have a few more losses in a couple of weeks.
Oh yeah.
I don't see how it
Yeah.
continues for like the Browns and the Bears. Like kind of yeah, yes, like people are saying, oh, the Browns beat the Colts. The Colts are a good team. They are not on the same level as the Steelers, the Ravens, the
Right.
Chiefs, the
Right. They're not.
Bills.
They're not.
They're
Right.
not
But the
on the
Browns
same
want to prove it,
level.
like we talked about. They have to go out there, beat the other teams in their division. You have to beat the Steelers. You have to beat the Ravens. You didn't do that. You got shellacked by the Ravens. So unless you go out and do that and you beat the elite teams, yeah, you haven't proved anything other than you're a good football team, but you're not a great one.
Right. And then you look at the NFC, it's you got Seattle and Green Bay undefeated, then the third seed is sitting at 3-2. Um,
Right.
and the crappy thing for like the second place team in the NFC West, they're gonna have a better record than probably the division winner of the
Two
NFC
division
South
leaders,
and the
maybe even
NFC
one.
East,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have to go to their stadium and
Right.
play. So you know, I think the NFC at the top two are much more defined than in the
Yeah.
AFC. I think
Yeah,
you
I
got in
agree.
the AFC, you got a ton of teams. I think that could easily get that. Um, but I think also the playoff caliber teams are much more divided in the AFC than in the NFC. You're gonna have more movement in the NFC than the AFC. I think as we go along here, it's going to
Right.
come down. There's going to be maybe 7, 8 teams vying for playoff, that those final couple playoff spots total. And then the NFC, you could have 10, 11 teams vying for it, depending on what happens in the NFC East. Because if that stays really close, you could have a really bad record, but still be in it technically. So.
Well, and I don't want to discount anybody in that division. Maybe the Giants,
Yeah, maybe the
just because they don't have a win, but everybody else has a chance still.
right. You're
So,
Washington sitting at 1-4, but you're only a game back.
right.
You know,
That's sad,
I
but it's
mean,
true.
you know, um, and then you got Philadelphia, who's a half game back, and
Right.
yeah,
It's just bad. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think there's a lot more. It seems like right now there's a lot more intriguing things in the NFC when it comes to working out the playoff picture. One other thing I wanted to mention, and it's a bit of a hometown, thing, but a lot of people have been talking about Aaron Rodgers and have been talking about the Packers offense. But I just want to kind of point out, this year has been a really bad one for defenses across the NFL. I mean, it's a historic year in terms of how much offense is out there. I'd just like to give a little love to the Packers defense, because I think that they've been playing a lot better than people have been noticing, just because of how gaudy the offense has been. They've really kind of clamped down on a lot of teams. that have some offensive firepower. And I know that, Minnesota put some points up, but that game to me was never in question. Um, and everybody else that they've played, I think they've done a good job of holding them. So I just kind of wanted to make a mention that I think the Packers defense, and this is what separates them, I think, from Seattle, even in the NFC, their defense is playing better than people are giving them credit for.
Yeah, and again, I'm looking at statistics here. You look
Mm-hmm.
at the Packers offense, they're second in yards per game behind Dallas. They're fourth in passing yards per game. They're fourth in rushing yards per game. Defensively, um, you know, I want to see. They only have that stat. I want to see points per game. They're allowing only 25.3 points per game. And when you look at the offensive numbers everybody put up this year, like you said, it's it's pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, uh, so the Green Bay's sitting points per game. They're sitting, let's see here. You
They should
know,
be pretty high up. They've only allowed 101 so far this
well, they're in the
season.
middle they're in the middle of the league. You got, Indianapolis number one 56.
Okay,
But again, this wasn't including this week's games, and yes, the Packers will be a game behind.
sure.
But then you got the Chiefs. You got teams that are under 100 points per game, but 25.3 points per game in today's NFL is not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, they're kind of, even, overall total yards per game, they're 12th in the league. Um,
Okay. Well, and I guess
rushing
my
yards
point
per
there is,
game, they're
I look
eighth.
at it and I think,
You know,
we look
so
back
their
as
defensive
fans.
stats aren't,
Yeah,
gaudy,
right.
but the thing you look at, okay, the thing that this is one of the key stats. They're sixth in the league in turnover differential, so
Mm-hmm.
they're plus three in overall in the turnovers.
Right.
They are they have more than three takeaways.
Well, and I look at this too, and I say, I look at what you've done as far as um, being able to keep teams off the field or get teams off the field, and there have been a couple situations where they haven't been great at that. But I look at the Atlanta game. Atlanta drove from their own 1 yard line when they got the ball back, and they ran 20 plays and they ended up kicking a field goal. To me, the way that they played and they held Calvin Ridley to just very he
Nothing,
barely did anything, and I don't even
nothing.
know if he had a
He
catch
got
in that
nothing because he's on my fantasy team, and I lost because of that.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do anything. I look at that and I think, those are the kind of things that they've been doing. I just wanted to commend them a little bit because I think back to the 2011 season for the Packers. They're a juggernaut on offense, but their defense was more of a sieve. This team, this isn't a sieve. It's good enough if the offense continues to perform at the level it is, and if the defense can stay in that 10-12 range and win the turnover battle, this team can win the Super Bowl. I mean, I understand that we're early on, and I know that this is our team, but if they continue to perform at that level, I think in today's NFL, you don't have to have a defense that's the '85 Bears or the 2001 Ravens, for you to win a championship. So
Well, a big thing here is, they're fifth in the league in sacks.
yeah,
That's huge in this day
yeah,
and age. A sack is a momentum changing play.
Right.
Now, they only have three total takeaways on defense, and I didn't even know
Right.
this. How about this? How many turnovers do you think the Packers have had
They
this
they
year?
have committed
They have
zero
zero
turnovers.
turnovers. So their offense is taking care of the ball. Their defense, yeah, they've taken away three times, but they're getting enough of a stop and allowing the Packers offense, who doesn't get stopped that much, they at least get field goals.
Right.
You score even a field goal in the majority of your offensive possessions, and your defense isn't giving up touchdowns all the time, you're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah.
And I still think, Green Bay's still trying to figure some stuff out in their defensive front. They obviously have to figure out
Right.
what they're going to do at inside linebacker. There's
Right.
rumors that they're bringing in going to bring in possibly another D tackle. Um, um, Hankerson. Possibly
Yeah.
he's been rumored that they've been talking with him. Bring him in and he even does anything along with I can't think of his name now.
Oh, Kenny Clark or
Kenny Clark.
yeah.
Holy cow, your run defense just improved tremendously.
Right.
Um, but we've said it before,
Yeah.
they have to find a dynamic middle linebacker that can
Mm-hmm.
make plays anywhere on the field. And
Right.
until they do that, their defense is going to be kind of it's an okay defense.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
they really want their defense to take the next step forward, they got to find that dynamic playmaker, even if they have to go and trade for a guy.
Sure.
They're going to have to do that. You look at all the good defenses. The first place you look at is that middle linebacker.
Right.
You know, and we'll start looking at that. I know that the trade rumors are starting to swirl with different teams, things like that. Um, because the teams that stink, things like that. Why not trade a guy? So
Yeah.
we'll delve into that here in the next week or so, um, about who might be available.
And who might be willing to look to make a move
Right.
to really improve themselves before the trade deadline's over. Yeah.
No, and to be honest here, if I'm San Francisco and I lose another game or two here, and it looks like we're not even going to make the playoffs and knowing we have so many injuries and we still need to improve our team,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a guy that I think I might be able to get a high draft pick for, I would still sell because you're not one player away in San Francisco. You're a quarterback and wide receivers away. You're not
Right.
just one player away. You had a great defensive run last year.
Yeah.
So, just looking at some headlines here. The Chiefs, um, our offense took a hit. One of their guards tore tendons in both his knees, so he'll be done. So, the key I think here for the Packers, stay healthy.
Yeah.
If you stay healthy, and can get Adams back and Lazard back, um, and really
Well,
get that
even Kenny
offense
Clark. I mean, with
and
when
Kenny
Kenny
Clark
Clark went
back.
down, yeah, that
You,
was one of the biggest issues for the Packers overall. And yeah, and they've been in a position where they're 4-0, they're on bye. If they can beat the Buccaneers, I mean, if they're 5-0, and some of these key positions get healthy again, man, I just feel like it looks like things are clicking and being put into place pretty well for them so far this year.
yeah, and if you look at their schedule, the Buccaneers, that'll be a good test to see how far they've come. But then
Right.
you got the Texans,
Yep.
then the Vikings,
Yep.
then the 49ers,
Right.
Jaguars, Colts, Bears, Eagles, Lions, Panthers, Titans, Bears. Now that Titans game is probably gonna be a tough game.
Yeah,
I think the Vikings game is gonna be a tough game just because it's a rivalry game.
right.
Um, but when you look at that schedule, they're probably gonna drop a game here, a couple games here, you
Yeah.
know. But
I mean,
at
I
the
look
same
at it, and
time,
I don't know what you think, Coach, but at the beginning of the year, I was kind of like, well, I don't know, 10-6, I don't know, and
right?
I was
You
worried. Now I look at it, I'm like 12-4.
12-4, 13-3.
Yeah,
Because if San Francisco does get healthy and get things rolling, that could be a tough game because you're at San Francisco. But if they're
right.
still struggling, you know, this could be a run here where you're looking at 12, 13 wins
Yeah.
and be sitting pretty come the
Hmm.
postseason. So obviously, we got ways to go. I really hope that they make a move um, and try to get a
Defensively, yeah,
linebacker in there in the middle of the field, even if it means giving up, a couple young guys or some future draft picks. Um,
well, and I feel better about that this year than I would have in the past. We know that Ted Thompson just wouldn't have done that. Now that they may actually look to do something like that if in this season, and they might actually trade to make that happen. So I think it would be nice too. I do agree. I think if they did something like that, they just aren't quite there. Like you said, if they really want to be stellar, they need to be able to figure out that position on the field because they do tend to get run on by a lot of teams.
right, and that's been an issue for them for a couple of years. So,
Right.
um, all right, Lone Wolf. I think that does it for this week. Um, unless you have anything else to add.
No, I am good.
All right. Again, thank you everybody for listening to the show. All the shows, all the way back to our very first show, are available on YouTube. Um, and we will be back as long as everything goes the way we like it to. Be back at the
Right.
end of the week to preview week 6. Um, it sometimes just doesn't happen that way because we don't get paid to do this. So it doesn't
Right.
happen. Um, and we'll go over next week's games, which could
Could
possibly
include
be.
some COVID games that were kind of shuffled around, like the I think the Patriots Broncos was one that
Yep,
got
we have
kind of
we have
moved.
some
So
COVID games in
yeah,
there.
yeah.
We could see
So
some undefeated teams possibly going down next week. So
right,
again,
a lot to look forward to.
thank you everybody for listening. Be safe and have a great week.
Night.